Eric
I want to go that
Cacciatore.
far.
Oh, come on, man. I'm going to make you do some voice stuff throughout this, man. I'm
right.
dropping my voice a little bit just to speak with you right now. So Eric Cacciatore is the host of Restaurant Unstoppable. He's based in Austin, Texas. The man has been at it 7 years, right? In the game a
2013. Yeah.
You set the bar high, and your level of communication and pulling out information about mentorship, about restaurants, is inspiring for sure. So I definitely siphoned some of that kinetic energy that you have. So I appreciate you setting the bar for us.
Kind of you, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's a pleasure to serve. I love what I do. I'm just fortunate to be able to do it, dude.
Yeah, that's true. And we're going to talk about that a lot. So for everyone watching, we're going to do a few things. One, we're going to go back because we've both pivoted, and we're going to talk about the word pivot a little bit as far as our normal platforms for the podcasts and what's happening now with this crazy shit that is COVID-19. And then also talk about just how we're thinking about communicating in our medium of podcasting as we come out of this, and what the restaurant industry specifically is going to need out of us as communicators. So you ready to talk about that, Eric?
Get into it, dude.
All right. So take us back to that moment, that pivot moment, and talk about, a month ago when it was like, can't do things as normal.
I'll kind of go like a little before that, like a week before that. I was in LA, and to kind of set that up for the past 7 years, I've been recording this podcast, Restaurant Unstoppable, and it took me 5 years to get to the point to get to the vision of being on the road. I always wanted to bring the podcast on the road and travel around the country. And there's something about, it's why you use video. There's something about seeing the person. There's something about the body language, the communication, and just the level of impact you have when you're in person. So I want to achieve that with the podcast, and that's what I was doing for the past 2 years, basically driving around the country. It started with basically like living out of my car, and then I was able to sleep on the floor of people's houses, people that listen to the show, and then from there I was able to eventually do Airbnbs, and things were scaling, things were starting to move forward. I was actually, just when this all started to happen, my videographer and my editor was going to come on the road with me. So like all these things are starting to come together, the vision, the dreams starting to come together. I'm in LA. That's when Corona like landed in the US. When I was in LA, it landed in Washington. I was like, oh shit, it's like right across, it's not too far away, like it's here now. Like, and in the week that I was in LA recording interviews, it moved from DC, and then the first cases were in LA, and I was like, oh man, this is starting to get real. And I was able to make it back to Austin, no issues, before things got real crazy. But I published an episode on the 16th of March, which was when, this thing's here. It's all over the country. It's in most corners in the nation at that point. Like, do you know where we were? What the number is around that time? Like the 16th of March? I can't remember exactly as far as, but around that time is basically when, I published an episode on the 16th of March. It was Jay Kim from Cilantro, which is a really well-respected restaurant here in Austin, nationally known, great interview. And I knew that episode was going to perform well, at least above average, and it was slightly below average, or not even slightly, but like noticeably below average. And I was like, that's not good. And that was on 16th. So around this time on Monday the 16th is when like the nation's like, shit, like we like or specifically the industry, like things were real, like we're going to be shutting down. Like, what do I do? Like, it was a meltdown mode, right? So everybody just wasn't focused on that content. They want, like, all their attention was going to, what do I do? What's like, how do I survive this? And I was like, if I'm going to survive, if my podcast is going to stay relevant over the next, who knows how long, then I need to pivot my podcast. I need to give my audience what they're looking for right now, which is answers. And I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew that, when there's devastation, when there's an issue, there's almost always opportunity if you're willing to see it. And not to say like, oh, like Corona, like opportunity, like, but you got to look for the silver lining in all situations. I mean, you have to.
Yeah, that was clear to me, and it was great to see you doing this. So there's a handful of people, yourself, our buddy Eric Chiappetta, Katie Osuna from Copper and Heat, that I kind of look to as, guiding lights, as I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. I just communicate. That's all I know how to do. And so it was interesting to see, you're doing the Chronicles, I think is what you're calling it. And And early on, you were putting out a bunch of episodes because you just like needed to contextualize what's happening in the way that you do, and that's having conversations with people. And so that pivot is interesting. So I saw that, and I saw myself also saying like, look, my conversations are why and who before what and how within hospitality, right? Mm-hmm. Like why we do what we do over what we do and how we do it, who we serve, that kind of thing. And so it's been interesting because now we don't have a lot of the what and the how. We don't have like the new hot trend. We don't have that new sexy ingredient. We don't have any of that. We just have getting food to people and nourishing people and communicating with our teams and stuff. So appreciate that. Did you basically cancel all of your scheduled interviews?
No. So I continued to let the content roll that I recorded because I was under a contract. I had sold the ad space on that content. I had it to deliver, and we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. So I let those roll, and then I started simultaneously. The way I looked at it is basically just like a new series, which was gonna. And at first, it was just like what you're saying, like people just wanted answers, and I was literally just like calling people in my network, past guests, people that I respect and admire, who I know would have something good to say, some good advice, and just going back to my network and just being like, what do you know? Like, where are you? And even I think just sharing that nobody knew was in itself consoling. Like, you're not alone. Like, nobody knows what's going on. Like, the government doesn't know what's going on. Like, we're all in the dark here. And even just knowing that you're not alone, like, kind of help take the edge off the anxiety. Like what am I going to do? What am I going to, what, just you and everybody else has no clue. So find some solace in that. It was kind of like the first message, I think, is just like, we're all in this together. We don't know. All we can do is hang tight. And then as the answers started slowly coming out, then we, once we thought we knew, like 3 days would go by and like, well, that plan's not going to work, So it's been really frustrating as a content creator, somebody who wants to, who finds, I find solace in knowing that people are finding value in my podcast, and to know that I can't put out an answer. I can't give somebody, like, I've made a living off the past 7 years of my life trying to provide answers, trying to give people guidance, trying to, support and motivate and inspire people. I'm like, where the fuck do you find the hope in all this? And I'm probably not allowed to curse. Sorry.
Oh yeah, man. Let it fucking rip.
All right.
Let's go.
Cool. All right. When you open the floodgates,
that's half of my vocabulary, man. Take that out, I'm screwed. I got nothing left. So it's the only thing entertaining about me.
Yeah.
So here's what I appreciate about what you're saying too. And this is a different situation for you because you are making your living off of it. Me, I'm just out here babbling on like an idiot, but it's a challenge. And so that moment you're talking about where you're obligated to it. And so I kind of had that moment a little bit too, because we had, I think, 4 episodes already queued up, ready to go, kind of just waiting for the timeline to play out. And then we kind of paused those for a second just to figure out what was going on. And Mark, producer, was like, do you want to put them out? I was like, I don't know. I feel like I do, because I feel like people want and need those moments of levity. Yet I don't want to be insensitive and be like, hey, listen to my podcast where, we kill it. It's like, so we paused all future interviews. So we had interviews lined up with people coming up, and we're like, hey, let's just pause on doing future interviews, but let's figure out a way to bring these episodes to life. And so what we kind of did was we basically got on the people who, like Debbie Gold out in Chicago, Katie Osuna, Erasmo Cassiano, some different people had episodes. And we said, let's get them on the live show, talk about what's happening now. And then as we're talking with them, say, and if you want a moment to break away from all this shit, listen to their full episodes. And so that felt like a thoughtful way. And so that was kind of the first ones that we scheduled. We're like, let's schedule 3 weeks apart, so each week we can just put out one episode. And so that felt at least like a way that we could honor their episode and the effort they put into it. And what was interesting is, same thing that you said, there was a moment around that March 16th where things started to kind of like shut down. Stuff was happening with fear, where nobody listened to any episodes, like nobody, nothing.
Yeah.
And our audience is nowhere near as big as yours, but it was noticeable. Then when Debbie was on, she was like the 3rd episode of this live thing, and we're on 39. This is episode 39, people. We saw a huge uptick, like 4 times as many people listening to episodes, the current episodes. And then we saw people going back clearly because they just didn't want to hear
Yeah.
what was going on
I
in
mean, as
you.
far, yeah, man, like, I was putting out 3 episodes a day. And 3 episodes a day for almost 2 weeks. I was averaging like 15 episodes, a week. And I wasn't putting anything on weekends. Which,
Yeah,
good on you for hustling around the week. That's awesome. But 3 episodes a day for 2 weeks. And at first, really, what I was trying to do was just I was being reactive intentionally. And I usually encourage people not to be reactive, but
right.
there's a time and place for everything. And when in mayhem, like when you just need to collect data and like put a plan together, like reactiveness is a good thing. Just ask questions, get out there, talk to people, get the big picture, get perspective. That's really what I was trying to do, is talk to as many people as possible in as short
Yeah,
as time as possible, from different segments of the industry, from different corners of the nation, to be like, what's happening where you are? How are you? What's
yep.
going on? What's the chatter there? And the mission from the beginning was to create alignment, because I knew that I couldn't provide the answers, but what I could do is get the industry aligned so we could all pull in the same direction. And I think that's
Yeah,
like in any
smart.
organization, that's the one thing you have to do, is that's what culture is. It's pulling in the same direction. It's having a direction and pulling in the same direction. And I knew that if I could create that for the industry, or at least to my listeners, then that would give us the best chance of getting out of this thing, which is, listening to the government and getting aligned. If there's division, it almost always prolongs things. And that's all I knew I could do, is just get people aligned.
Yeah, 3 episodes a day. I know for me, it's such a contradiction. It's so polarizing for me. I think all things. I am a contradiction at all times. But this is so invigorating, and it's so selfishly, I need to talk to you right now. Like, this is therapy for me. And at the same time, I feel the weight of it, especially when I started getting, like, we had the deputy executive director of the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment on, and like we had an SBA specialist, all these things that aren't just conversations with the homies in the industry. And I felt the weight and responsibility and fielded like, thousands of interactions over these weeks. And so it's like I feel invigorated and then exhausted. You're doing 3 episodes a day. I mean, talk about that for you personally.
At first it's definitely not sustainable. I knew I couldn't do it forever, but I knew that the best way I could serve was just by listening and, like I said, collecting those perspectives and putting them in one spot. And honestly, it's funny, but like to think that I was actually, while I was recording, all these interviews, I was thinking to myself, I was like, wow, this is a cakewalk. Like, this is
Yeah.
like, so like compared to literally driving laps around the nation, like I would like to record 1 hour of content. I would have to put like literally my whole life on, like I was living on the road to get that content. And to that, like I could record all that content in a day and I wouldn't have to break down my system. Like I wouldn't have to like relocate. So it was kind of a relief, and it was a little reassuring to know that like it's something that I could do from home and still be of value. Like I was a little worried that because I was losing my unique selling proposition, not being able to be on
Mhm.
site in person, that would hurt me, and that I was taking steps back. But I feel like I've been able to find value or be of value during this. And that's, I think at the end of the day, all we want to be is seen. We want to be recognized. We want to feel like, I think that's what is, it's very true in all hospitalitarians. Like we just want to like make sure you're happy, and that like recognition that like you acknowledge what we're doing and you're appreciative is like gold for us.
Yeah, let's stay on that because I really like what you're saying right now. One, hospitality industry is maybe struggling more than a lot of other industries and other people just because we're close to it. But here's a couple reasons. One is, I mean, about 25% of the unemployed are coming from the restaurant industry. It's
Yeah.
massively, massively decimated in this moment. Two, we're built on face-to-face interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are face-to-face, you are in the bubble of your guest, you are shoulder to shoulder grinding it out with another human being. And now, Eric, you and I are face-to-face. This is now face-to-face in this weird, I don't even fucking like new normal, but that's what people keep calling it.
Yeah.
So
I really
I'm
like
into
it.
that.
Sorry, go ahead.
So from a hospitality perspective, I want to lay that groundwork for you. Then thinking about the simplification of the way that you're communicating in this moment, I'm very interested in that piece of it, because now You talked about your unique selling proposition, and now you're saying, well, look, people just need me to communicate. I need to communicate because that's how I'm of service. So talk about that a little bit more as we think about what we're doing currently and what we do next, how we then reconcile those two things of the way that we feel like we're supposed to communicate and the thing that we are meant to do. And in this moment, it only matters that we are communicating in whatever way possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of compounds off of what I've been saying is that we need to get aligned. And I think part of the communication isn't necessarily making sure that you're being heard, but it's also listening to what else is going on out there and being receptive. Because I think the last thing that we need right now is really, it's scary because we don't when we want to, like I said, we want to get aligned, but it's only a matter of time before there's schools of different thought that start bubbling up,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And we want to do what's right for everybody. We want to make sure that people we love are safe and healthy. We want all these things, but at the end of and we're willing to sacrifice to make sure that people are safe and healthy. And there's value to all life, right? But at the same time, there's also value to a healthy economy. And
Yep.
how many hundreds of thousands, if not how many millions of people have been affected by this, devastated by this, versus how many people have been devastated by the coronavirus? You know what I'm saying? Like the reaction to the coronavirus, not the actual out. You know what I'm saying? So there's gonna be bubbles of people being like, "Why the fuck are we still doing this?"
Yeah.
Our whole economy is going to crumble. Like we're going to go into a massive recession. Like all life is valuable, but what about the rest? Like what, there's got to be a better way. And then what you're going to see is if we don't get aligned sooner than later, I think it's going to be the divergence is only going to increase, right? You're going to have the schools of like, let's get out there and start getting back to business, and then no, let's stay isolated. Like, like this is just an example. So I think that we have to stay open minded and try to come to a place in the middle, right? So we're whatever we decide, it's together, and we can, what's you go faster alone, but you go further together. What's the saying like that? And I think the conversation, the thing we need to be communicating right now to kind of to come full circle is what's the future of our industry look like when we come back out of it? Like we get to choose what we look like, what's wrong with the industry, and how can we, instead of reacting to the market, which is something that our industry is notorious for, we react. What's the market doing? What are the numbers doing? Follow the trends. And I think that there's some good advice in that, and there's also some bad advice in that, where like we just react to the market constantly. We paint ourselves into corners. That's why our food system's fucked up. That's why we don't make any money. That's because we're always undershooting each other. We're reacting to the market. So how can we be intentional? What's the vision of our industry in the perfect case scenario look like, and how can we get aligned to achieve that together? Like what's best for all of us is the kind of the thing that I think we should be communicating right now. And that's I think that's kind of what we do when we share information. We look for trends, and then we look for the best advice, and we go for it.
Yeah, part of it is we're such instant gratification as individuals, and then as a community and hospitality, right? It's always you're as good as your next plate, and so you live in this like microcosm of this moment versus like thinking in the macro, and sometimes that's a challenge. To your point, how then do you navigate being kind of the conduit, right, for the sharing of information, the sharing of stories, the introduction to new ideas, to new people within the industry, ushering in kind of those trends as you mentioned, and also having a position at certain points, and then at other times just being the platform for the conversation? How are you navigating that holistically, and then maybe in this moment as the conversations are becoming very much like, this fucking sucks, why would we do this? Like there's just a lot of tension and friction now. And understandably so.
Yeah, holistically, I see myself as a student, honestly. Like, and that's what I try to tell myself all the time. As I'm getting out there, I just try to stay curious, and I try to keep in mind that there's so much to learn, and I have learned a ton, but the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know shit. So I just try to keep that mentality of a student, and that's kind of been like the mantra of I'm here to learn from the most successful restaurateurs and operators, and then to make those lessons available to the rest of the industry. To the mission is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. So the way I can do that is by staying curious, by learning and sharing the lessons and the inspiration with others. That's holistically. In this moment in time, I, I'm just trying to share perspective. And I think when back to the whole idea of pivot, I think in a time when we're making a pivot, it's never been more important to have a mission statement, to have a purpose, because even though your vision might change, your mission stays the same. So when I was pivoting, I'm like, okay, my mission is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. How can I empower the industry right now? Nobody has any answers, but we can get perspective, like we can share ideas. And I think on top of that, it's just really important to remind people to have an open mind, and to like consider all things. And that's fucking exhausting. It takes a lot of work to have perspective. And I think people need to be mindful of that, because when they get exhausted, when they say, well, there's just too much, like fight the urge and really try to understand and have empathy for other perspectives, because we need that more than ever right now. And it's really exhausting. It sucks. But it's something we have to do. Our energy sucks, and to put that frontal lobe into hyper gear and to like really understand and try to empathize is exhausting. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm sorry if I get off track easily. That's why I'm better at asking questions than answering them.
I have no idea what the question was.
I think like in my holistic, like, what am I trying to do? Like, what's the mission? What's the voice I'm using? I'm just a student. I'm trying to share information, try to share perspective. I don't think I have all the answers as far as like the industry secrets, but I have a lot of, I'm not like trying to be like the thought leader. I'm just trying to give my platform to others. All I can do is give a platform for those who do know to stand on, to get their vision, their value, their experience, their knowledge out. And hopefully the industry gets empowered by that.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time. I have zero answers. I just happen to be good at asking questions. I'm like the annoying kid in the front row, and I feel like you have that too. You're just going to keep asking and digging and digging and digging. Not like it's fucking Dateline, like you're trying to get the scoop, but you're just trying to pull at that thread that gets you all the way to the middle, all the way to the core.
I'll tell you a funny story. In 6th grade, during sex education, I asked how the semen got inside the vagina. I had no clue what was going on. I am that curious kid that will ask the weird question, and I'm willing to take one for the team to, and my buddy had to explain it to me in the dugout in the ballpark afterwards. He went through the motions and everything. I was like, what? Really?
Crazy. Yeah. The only stupid question is the one that you don't ask, man. I'm with you all the way. I don't care if I ask the dumb question. If it leads to another smart answer, a question that then leads to an answer, I'm all about it. So
I got in trouble for that. I got kicked into the hallway. I was like, what the hell? I thought we were here to learn.
No, they're there to check boxes, man, but that's a whole nother conversation. And so when you are thinking about kind of who's on your show and who has the information to share, this is another thing I'm interested to get your perspective on, because I think about it in two ways, always. I basically think top down and bottom up. So we have, unsung hospitality heroes. That's our hashtag, and that's the thing that we're always trying to promote. It's what you see us sharing on social media, just acknowledging others. Mm-hmm. And so we get thought leaders, we get people that are well-established brands and have the restaurants and have the credibility and all that, and then have them tell us about somebody we've never heard of and get them on the show as well. And so it's in this moment, there's been a lot of that. My favorite stories have been the person who's laid off currently, who's still saying, I love my restaurant family, because, the executive chef or the owner is in there cooking meals for family meal, like that. Like they have nothing. They already live paycheck to paycheck. They have nothing right now, yet they're taking moments in a stupid show like this to acknowledge the fact that the business that they work for like gives a shit about them. Like, so I reflect on that when you're thinking about the guests that you have on and the stories that you're looking for. I look for people like yourself. I see putting positive content out on social media. I'm like, I want that. I need to have that conversation. So tell us about how you're thinking about the guests and kind of what perspectives they potentially are bringing.
It's a great question. Right now, one of the things I've been kind of struggling with over the past 6 months for myself is like I've been going out meeting so many people, the next person. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that it's not about how many people you know, it's about who you know and how well you're how well you're connected to that person, the quality of the relationship, not the quantity of the relationships. And I going so hard, doing so many episodes a week for the past 7 years, I found myself, I was like, I have no substance in my life. I know all these incredible individuals, but it's all surface deep. I don't have deep, meaningful relationships. What I want to do is go back to my network, the people who made it, like who really impressed me, who I really resonated with, and people who I think need to be heard, need to get attention because they have values that need to be echoed throughout the industry. And that's kind of where I started. I went back to those people. I'm like, who I know is doing it right? If I had to guess, like, I bet so-and-so is crushing it right now. Like, how are you doing? At first, that's kind of where I was at. Honestly, right now, I've been thinking about, I'm kind of committed to tapping the brakes on the Corona Chronicles and going back and kind of, I think that we're at a point now where we know this is going to be months long, and I don't think much is going to change, but what we can do is just, focus on what the outcome coming kind of going back to what we were saying before. Like, we get to choose what the future looks like, and that's really what I want to focus on now. So basically, just continuing to go back to my network and be like, where are you at? What's the future look like? How do you think we can come back stronger? What changes do you think need to happen? So I'm just going back to the unstoppable core content, probably starting actually this week, and I'm slowly going to start to transition away from Corona Chronicles. So I think now we just need to, I think we're hungry for normalcy. We want to get back into routines, and I think that I need to acknowledge that it's been a month now. We got answers. We know this is going to suck for 6 months, and as news comes up, we can share it. But I think we just want to get back to that normalcy.
Yeah. So to tell you honestly, the reason I wanted you on this show is just to get permission to do that. That was it.
What's that, to go back to your normalcy? Yeah, man. I think people want it.
Show's over. That was it. Because here's the thing. For me, I want to know, can I right now have a conversation with you and be like, Eric, tell me about the first moment where you recognize hospitality in your life. Tell me about, Cacciatore, doesn't get more Italian food family name than that. Like, come on. So, like, tell me about Sunday gravy with your grandma, that kind of thing. And I didn't know if I could have that conversation in a vacuum with people and not say, and so how are you doing today, being unemployed, your restaurant's shut down, that kind of thing. And so I'm very interested in how to have those conversations. The two things for me personally were, I want to know that most of my people got their unemployment or their stimulus check, and I wanted to know that most of the businesses got or know where they stand with this PPP stuff. That felt like the thing that was most urgent for them, that they really didn't want to have any other conversation that wasn't contextualized within this moment until that kind of happened. So that felt like something for me, and that's starting to happen right now. And so that's really, I'm looking for your leadership on when I can have those conversations again. And I think they'll be different. They will have some different level of depth, but to your point, that mission, the purpose is crystallized for you and I. The way that we go about articulating that might be different. And so,
yeah, I don't know if is there a question in that? I want to make sure.
Question. No, just talk about whatever I was just talking about in your perspective.
Well, reflecting on PPP and what's going on within the industry and what people need to know and what we can communicate, I'm a little frustrated, and I might get some backlash from this, but I'm a little frustrated with our industry. I think there's some people who have legitimate reasons not to get back to work. And I want to acknowledge that. But I think there's a lot of people that are just like, wait a second, you mean to tell me that I get a paycheck every week, I get to stay at home and hang out with my family I never get to see, or I get to go back to work and put myself at risk of contracting this virus? I think there's a certain point where we have to get back to work. And I get a little frustrated now because there's a lot of restaurant owners that are looking to hire their employees back. Like, people are like sick of going and standing in line at the grocery store all day. They want to order takeout, and the business is starting to come back a little bit, and people are staying busy, and restaurant owners are trying to bring their employees back, but people are rather collect the paycheck. You know what I'm saying? And I think that we need to listen, like, this thing is serious. We need to take it seriously, but we also need to fucking get back to work. And I feel like that's kind of the sentiment I feel right now. And I feel like a lot of people are just kind of taking a long vacation. And then maybe maybe I piss off some folks, but I think that if we're gonna get back, like, follow the rules, there's guidelines put in place. Really, when you reflect that, a very small percentage of people have been affected by this thing. And I think that there's a little bit of like fear mongering going on right now. And I think needs to be taken seriously. We need to wear face masks. We need to be washing our hands. We need to be mindful of what we're doing, but we need to get back to fucking work. You know what I'm saying? Like, our fucking economy needs it. So if you're just collecting a check and riding the fucking wave, you should be embarrassed. Like, I'm getting my emotional right now because I feel like people are just sucking on the government tit. Like, get back to work. We're a consumer economy. We're fucking capitalists. We need to work. Like, what don't you understand? You know what I'm saying?
And I think when I hear you talking to the economical debate aside, because that's a whole other show. What I'm interested in, what I hear you saying, is getting back to work. To me, when I hear that, I think about right now we are really aware of our health when it comes to the potential for coronavirus, and not even just our personal health. I'm not scared of coronavirus, but there's definitely people that I could come in contact with that are highly susceptible. So I'm aware of that, right? Like thinking downstream a little bit. What we don't talk about enough is the mental health of this. This is hard. Again, back to the point of like how we are built. Our DNA is built on the fundamental structure of interacting with other humans on the day to day. We
Yeah.
need it. And so this is a struggle, I think, more so for the mental health, which then is compounded by the economic factors of it and the uncertainty, and then the I mean, Eric, long road out of this.
Yeah.
Because here's what's going to happen is people are chomping at the bit right now to get back to work potentially and also get back out to the restaurants. Except also, what is that experience going to be like? Because that first week, I guarantee you, people are going to like flood into those restaurants. It's going to be awkward. There's now the 3 phases of how you social distance and operate within the restaurants, and still that's not very clear. And they're going to get busy at that first moment. But what if that experience is awkward for everybody involved? It's going to like potentially dip, and then you're going to do the big long climb out of it as you find the way to navigate that. And so, mental health now,
Yeah. Well,
that
the
climb be hard.
the longer we wait for like the world to get better all of a sudden, the longer that transition out of this is going to get. And I think there's a thing we need to like recognize. The longer we wait under these restrictions, the harder it's going to be to recover. And I know that, I'm not saying like don't listen to the government. I'm not communicating that, but I think that the government kind of has to figure out like a plan B. Like, okay, like at what point is waiting for this thing to flatline going to be worse than our economy plummeting completely? And like, who is going to be more affected? And I'm not saying lives don't matter. I'm not saying, but at the same time, we gotta look at the bigger picture. We're so close to it. We got the fucking blinders on. You know what I'm saying? We need to see the big picture. What's the long run? We need to get up. We need to climb the 30,000 feet real quick and go, what happens when we stay on this trajectory? I don't know the answer, but it's a question that needs to be answered. Because you're right. We are social creatures. We are like, that is our opposable thumbs and our frontal lobe and our, like those things, like what make us us. And part of that frontal lobe is social creatures. We need each other to be mentally healthy. It's fact. And I don't, one of my biggest fears is that we go into this like hermit community, right, where we react to the situation. Like, we're very reactive creatures. We have the ability to peer into the future, but our first default action is reaction. And we're reacting right now. We need to get away from that and think logically and try to get a plan together. Because my biggest fear is that we react to this market, and we are a very displaced community. Like, we already don't need each other, but we do need each other. Like, we need each other because we're humans, but we don't need each other because it's 21st century. Like, we have technology and tools to do things, but we can't lose sight of the fact that we need each other. And I would hate to see a world with a bunch of ghost kitchens. You know what I'm saying? I would hate to see that. What we need to do is figure out a way that we can go back to life as we knew it, and protect those people who are at risk of this. Maybe that's not possible. Who knows? But I can't speak out of place because I don't know enough, and I want to make that clear. Like, I'm still learning like you guys are, but this is a question we need to ask. Do I sound like a crazy person right now? Hope I don't.
I mean, you sound like you're in the hospitality industry. We all sound fucking crazy, man.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be accountants or something,
Right.
Normal. So, yeah, I appreciate it. Here's the thing. Again, like, we're students. We're just going to keep asking the questions. Like, we have thoughts. And I think the more I ask questions, the more my thoughts evolve. And that's what I appreciate about it. And so what I like here, top takeaways for everybody: get back to purpose when it comes to your mission and how that vision is articulated within your brand. I love that. Like, get to the core. What you've been doing in your show, get to the core, and then have those tactics that get you to the core. But if you are all about tactics and without any substance, it doesn't fucking matter, and it does not sustain. Love that. With the show, it's time to figure out how to come out of this and create those moments of levity for people, laugh and learn all that. So I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to see kind of how we evolve coming out of this, because I think we'll be forever changed by this. And I think you and I both are of the mindset that like, we're going to use this as fuel to like really dig deep into the stories that matter, that truth, like fucking matter, not surface area stuff. So I appreciate that. Any last thoughts on just where you're at, what's happening? And then we'll touch on a couple playlist items.
Yeah, I just want to remind people that, like you mentioned earlier, like there are people that have absolutely nothing, right? And they're devastated by this. They have no cash flow. They have no money. Their bank accounts are running dry. And I just want to remind people that we still have something. And I think that we forget that business isn't all about money. Really, what money is just a way to measure and track relationships. And just because we're not getting cash flow from those relationships doesn't mean those relationships still aren't there. And that's still capital. That's still an asset. Those relationships are assets. You can't lose sight of that. That means, so we say we have nothing, but we still have our relationships. And how you manage those relationships right now, how you treat those relationships, how you maintain those relationships right now, you're still got, that's all cash flow. That's all value. Those are all assets. And don't forget that, because as soon as this thing gets lifted, those relationships will continue on and we'll be able to put money to it. But, don't forget that really all money is a way to just manage and track and measure relationships. That's all it is.
That's it. Yeah. And that's what we have right now is those relationships. And I hope that we crystallize the importance of those. So, man, I'm with you 100%. Some playlist items. We were joking about how like, man, we don't listen to music anymore. We're so in the podcast world that like, even at the gym, I'm listening to like Gary Vee or Tim Ferriss. So what are a couple playlist items? Maybe some other podcasts, maybe some things that motivate you. What are a couple things you can geek out on with you?
I'm gonna turn my phone on so I can get to my my Audible playlist and my podcast playlist. I started listening to a book called Pivot, because I thought it would be like really interesting. And I can't remember the name of the author. What's that?
It's the word of the day, man.
Right. And I was thinking about getting the author on the show to kind of talk about the pivot, which is why I'm listening to the book. For some reason, I cannot get onto Amazon. Here we go. Do you want the name of the author? I kind of feel like we should give her credit, right?
Yeah. Give him some shout outs, man. Audible would be great for me. I love it.
Blake. Yeah. Jenny Blake is the author of that book, Pivot. The only move that matters is your next one. And it's basically, it just kind of takes you through that when you're going through transition, like how to make that pivot. And I think another book that or maybe the podcast I'm listening to, I like to listen to Jordan Harbinger, The Art of Charm. I think it's a great podcast. And the reason why I love his podcast is because I always say behind every great restaurant's a great person. And I think that being successful in the restaurant industry is really just a matter of like getting inner control and inner domination, and that just reflects in your outer life and your business and all those relationships. And he teaches us how to be a better person in the sense of like how the mind works. And I think part of being a better person is understanding what you are. And reacting the right way to what you are. It's like a car. It's like an engine. You hear a rattle under the hood. You learn to identify that noise. You know how to react to it. Your mind's the same way. Your emotions are the same way. If you learn what's going on inside of you and how to react to it, you can become a much better person. And I think Jordan Harbinger, he gets into that kind of stuff, and I love that shit. And another thing I think we should all be listening to right now on books is Conscious Capitalism. I think now's a good time to pivot our mindset and our perspective and our values more than anything else. Not just our business, but who we are and how we want to come out of this. And I think Conscious Capitalism is a great book to read to get that pivot on.
That is perfect, man. You hit from a lot of different angles in those 3 recommendations. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Depth, man, is going to be important. All right. Real quick before I let you go, give us a Restaurant Unstoppable, man. Your intro, every time I hear you say Restaurant Unstoppable, it fucking melts my ear off, and I'm pumped to listen to the episode.
So what do you want me to do? I think I got a little shy there.
Restaurant Unstoppable. I'm not even going to attempt to do it, but give us your call sign, Restaurant Unstoppable.
Oh, man. when I start every episode, hey Jensen, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I love it, man. I can't do that. Betsy
Oh,
makes fun of me all the time. I do like these voice exercises. My Aunt Janie, who I love you, Aunt Janie, she just responded. She said, "Eric, you are so right. We have to learn the difference between reacting and responding." All caps. So
yeah.
Aunt Janie is a voice coach, and she helps me out. And I still can't get to Eric Cacciatore land, but I appreciate it, man. And keep inspiring, keep communicating. That's what we're here to do, and we're going to find creative ways to continue to do that and support. So I really appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Jensen. I just want to let you know you're doing a great job. And, I love the sentiment of finding people that are doing it right in the industry and making an example of them. And I'm so supportive of your work and what you're trying to do. And I think that, more of us need to serve as platforms to share knowledge and to move our industry forward. And you're doing good work, man. Keep it up.
Could not agree more. We're gonna talk more, Eric, because I think the way that we move forward is going to be really important. And alignment is a word. I scribbled it down. I've been pulling words into my lexicon: grit, momentum, alignment. These are some words that like I hadn't used before that people have dropped on me that have just like, yep, I'm in. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. We'll talk some more, Eric. Thank
All
you
right,
so
brother.
much, man. Have a
Thank you.
great day.
You too. Cheers.
Yeah. Love that dude's show. Definitely go listen to some Restaurant Unstoppable. He does a great job. I got into it when I saw he was doing some episodes in Denver. Matt Selby, Robert Thompson, Justin Brunson, and Steve Redzikowski were the episodes that I listened to. And if you're in Denver, you know those names. And if not, just check them out. Worth listening to for sure. Just good stuff. Always just pulling at those threads and really controls the timeline of the story being told in a meaningful way. So I appreciate that. I'm going to be back on here in a little bit, in about 20 minutes, with Nelson Perkins, chef owner of the formerly iconic Colton Gray, which he shut down not too long ago. So I'm interested to get his perspective. And then tomorrow starts another week, great lineup. And we'll have Julia June on, who is part of the Flatirons Food Film Festival that is premiering next weekend. And I'm excited because I need those moments of levity. So they do some great work there at Flatirons Film. A lot of F's. Flatirons Food Film Festival. And we're going to talk about what they're doing a little bit because I need some of that in my life. All right, everybody, be good. Find some moments of alignment. As Eric said, cheers.